When I deliver something really heavy like that, when I say something like, yeah, isn't that amazing? Like, you feel like there's been something missing, something that you've always wanted, and you doubted it, but what would it be like if suddenly it's like you were looking right at them? Anyway, I take it away. Why do I take it away like that?
Fractionation.
I'm fractionating her, and it's really heavy. When I fractionate her, what does that do? That means that those thoughts are going to be running in the background now because I took it away consciously. It's like giving a suggestion. It's like, in a sense, it's like giving a post-hypnotic suggestion and then distracting the person so they don't remember it. Immediately distracting them when they come out. You want to distract them. So you always want to have those little throwaway fractionations. So when you present something really tasty and really good, you take it away. Now, here's where amateur speed seducers fuck it up. They get this really, look up here guys, they get this really great response, okay? So you say to her, yeah, isn't that amazing? Like, there's something you always wanted. Notice the gestures? It's not like you're calling in you're not waving in the Royal Navy. It's very subtle. It's like, okay, it's like there's something you've always wanted. Keep your hands close to your body. And you've doubted it, you thought maybe this is the one. And what would it be like if all of a sudden, it's like it's right in front of you, you're looking right at it. It feels so great. Anyway, so these two, I just move right off it. Why do I move off it? Because let's say I kept embellishing it. It's like you're looking right at it, and you realize that you've got to do something to get this, because if you don't, you lose out forever. It's like my friend was saying, when you feel that, and it's just too much. It's like, whoa, 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 whoa. They start resisting. But if you present this juicy, it's like, let's say there's I'm going to use a bad metaphor. Let's say there's a hungry junkyard dog chained up by a rusty chain. And like, you take a big steak, and you put it right under the dog's nose. The dog is drooling and salivating, and then you pull it away. This is a little mean, but see, the thing is it's fractionating. If you just throw it to her like that, she may resist it. But by pulling it away a little bit and changing the subject, her natural response is going to be, wait a minute, what about the stuff you were talking about before? So she keeps reaching for it. Do you understand? Now I know what's going to happen. The first few times you guys try this, and it actually works. The first few times you try this, the first 20 times you try this stuff, and like that 10 who's 20 years younger than you is slobbering all over you, your temptation is going to want to keep going and blow her head up. That won't work. You're going to have to back off that.
Ross?
Yeah.
It's just really hitting me right now, this fractionation thing. It's a little bit like in the military, where if you keep shooting at somebody who's stuck behind a brick wall, they can't pop their head up. So you have to stop shooting at them to allow them to pop their head up.
That's a very bad metaphor. That's a very violent bad metaphor. I don't like that metaphor. But it's accurate. It's accurate, but I don't like that metaphor. We're not shooting any. Remember, in this whole process, we're offering the kind of feelings that women want to feel. They want to feel this stuff. You understand? This is what they want to feel. You're thinking about the implications of this. I saw you go. I saw him go. Oh, damn. That's why I fucked it up all these years. Is that what you were thinking? You were thinking that, right? Something along the lines of, damn, that's why I've always fucked it up. And my writer is exactly what you were thinking. Stand up so the cameras don't see you, but say, that's exactly right. Was I exactly right? I read his thought. How did I know exactly what he was thinking? Sit down. How do I know? Because I just know. That's exactly. But the light just turned on for you, didn't it? Now what you can do is go back through all those experiences. Imagine if you had had this knowledge. Imagine if you had had this knowledge and then go back through all your old experiences applying this knowledge. How would you now feel about yourself sitting here today? It would seem a lot different, wouldn't it? Yeah. This is what was wrong. All those years when you got your ass kicked in the dating game, all those years when women said, I just don't feel that way about you. Have you ever heard that one? Raise your hand. Oh, you're like my brother. Have you heard that one? Have you heard this one? Sorry, I just want to be
Friends.
Oh God, does that hurt or what? It's like a stake right through your heart. It's painful. Imagine how all those things would have been different had you had this knowledge and applied these principles.
Yep.
It would have been so different. And it will be different. It already is different. You can never go back to the way you were. Sometimes just knowing how to do this is enough. You don't even actually have to do any of it because you're so bleeding fucking confident that they're attracted to you. See, this is how I'm not bluffing or kidding you. This is how I can, within a matter of 20 minutes, have an 18, 19, 20-year-old girl want to fuck me. It's not because of this. Whereas before, I would have heard, you're old enough to be my dad. Occasionally, I still hear that. I hear, you're old enough to be my dad. My response is, tell me about your sick attraction to your father. Or I'll say, don't worry, I won't crush your cigarettes, Debbie. That's that old joke. What did the 14-year-old Southern girl say to her lover? Daddy, you're crushing my cigarettes. I don't know what the British equivalent would be of someone from the South in America. Like in America, it's the Southerners, you know. What's the British equivalent?
Irish.
The Irish. The 14-year-old Welsh girl says to her lover, Daddy, you're crushing my cigarettes. But, yeah.
What about that one, Ross, on the home study war course when the stripper came to you and she said, oh, you're a solicitor, honey, and you know Los Alamos. You're that, honey. You ignored. You took her then for a...
Don't try to do American accents, it doesn't work. Anyway, so this whole topic, this whole set of jokes, stories, poems, right? They're quizzes. They're all designed, again, to get her responses from that fourth level of her mind, incorporate them back, embed suggestions, use ambiguity. We're going to use the same basic tools, it's just a different delivery vehicle. You know, you've got FedEx, you've got UPS, you've got Royal Mail, you've got carrier pigeon, you've got cell phone, but they're all used to deliver the same sort of thing, and they're all used in the same way. They're used through the right five, they're used through fractionation, they're used through paying attention and incorporating her responses, they're used by using ambiguity and embedded commands and embedded suggestions and fractionation. It keeps taking place through the whole thing. Now, the next category I talked about is indulgence, escape. Remember, indulgence, escape, fantasy, and it takes the form of asking a question. The question is, when you really want to cut loose, when you really want to escape and completely indulge yourself, what kind of things do you like to do? Right? You can start out by asking the right question. Questions are a great way to start a seduction. So when you really want to escape, when you want to indulge yourself and just cut loose, what kind of things do you love to do? Now, in order to answer that question, what part of her mind must she access to answer it? She's got to go into that part of her mind when she thinks about fantasies, desires, escape. Now look here. You need more time to write that question? When you really want to cut loose, indulge yourself, escape, what kind of things do you love to do? Now, that's not necessarily sexual, but it's right next door to the compartment of your mind where she thinks of sexual things. Hold on. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Imagine a block of flats. Over here is the flat that contains her wildest sexual, kinky fantasies. Okay? Right next door, separated by the very thinnest wall, is the compartment where she thinks about what she does when she wants to indulge and escape. For all we know, she likes to masturbate watching porn. We don't know. It could be that there's no door between, it could be that that wall has got a door that's always open. But at the very least, if you get things jumping in this room, it's going to wake up the person living in the flat next door, isn't it? Do you get it? So you don't have, look up here, you don't have to go for this directly. You don't have to directly go for something sexual. If you get the room next door all agitated and awoke, you understand? It's going to stir this. Now, with a lot of women, that partition is mighty thin. When women hit their 30s, boy howdy, if a truck goes by, they get horny. Or if a woman's ovulating, that wall gets really thin. You can punch through it like it's tissue paper. Or there's big overlap. They're like, there's a big door there, and it's open, wide open. So if you can introduce this whole thing of indulgence, fantasy, escape, adventure, and it just goes, now here's what you don't do. You don't say, Debbie, in a moment, I'm going to try to awaken the sexual fantasy part of you by talking about something that's pretty closely related. So get ready for this question that will open up the deepest parts of your mind, reveal information that I can use to leverage to get you really horny, and leave you with me in the next hour. Ready, set, go. You don't want to do that. Yes?
But wouldn't that be a real nice pattern breaker, or a, what's it called?
Fraction.
No, I mean that.
Pattern interrupt.
Pattern interrupt. Yes.
What would be a pattern interrupt?
What you just did.
Yeah, well, if you're going to do a pattern interrupt, Nate, here's the key. A pattern interrupt has to get attention in a positive way. You want to do something different that gets attention in a positive way. A pattern interrupt could be me walking up and barfing all over her shoes. That's certainly a pattern interrupt, but it's not going to lead us where we want to go, is it? So the rule for a pattern interrupt is to do something unexpected in a way that leads to her attention flowing to us in a positive direction. You understand?
But if you do this as a put on,
You're saying go directly up to her and say, hi, Debbie. In a moment, I'm going, no, I wouldn't. That's really telegraphing the punch, mate. It's like you're in a boxing match, right? And you say to your opponent, in a moment, I'm going to wind up like this and throw a right hook right to your jaw, and I'm going to knock your ass out. And you're counting on him laughing so hard that it's going to work. No, don't do it. Where was I? That really distracted me again. Yeah, when you really want to cut loose, indulge, escape, what kind of things do you really like to do? Right?
Right.
Now, with this horny little 22-year-old, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, Jewish female college student who still calls me. She called me to wish me a happy Jewish New Year, but that's not what she wanted to talk about. I use that one. I said there, I said, when you really want to escape, indulge yourself, what is it that you really like to do? And she actually answered me different. She said, oh, I'd love to go back to the Mykonos Islands. I said, really? Well, tell me about the Mykonos Islands. She said, well, I went there. I said, wait a minute, take me with you. So we arrive at the Mykonos Islands. What time of day is it? She said, it's sunset. I said, really? Describe the sun. I'm looking at the sun with you. What am I feeling as I feel along with you as we look at the sun? She said, well, we feel this. She bought right into it. And as I had her progressively describe being there, we went on a vacation to the Mykonos Islands. And we experienced all the feelings that she felt together. At one point, we went into this little grotto. We took all our clothes off and we slipped into the water. Sometimes when I do this, I'm thinking, this is fucking great. Life is really great, you know? So, I'm sorry, sometimes what I do just touches me right there. So, that's a really good question, isn't it? We're going to do seduction questions later in the afternoon. But in the right context, these questions are great, because to answer it, to make any sense of the question, she has to go inside, right? You get it?
Yeah.
So that's a really good thing. Another way we can bring up indulgence is to say, hey, Debbie, do you like chocolate? Do you know where this is going, guys?
Yeah.
What's the famous pattern? I can't hear you.
Blowjob.
Louder, I can't hear you.
Blowjob.
That's right. For those of you watching this on Channel 4, it's the infamous blowjob pattern. Hey, Debbie, do you really like chocolate? Well, I was watching this interesting show on the Discovery Channel, and they're talking about the difference between indulgence and anticipation. Strike that, compulsion and anticipation. They're talking about the difference between compulsion and anticipation. Compulsion Compulsion is when you just find yourself doing something. Like, you ever just find yourself reaching for the refrigerator, and before you even realize it, the door's open and you don't, what am I doing? You ever find that happening, by the way, guys?
Yes.
Like, you ever just find yourself, wow, what am I doing here? I didn't even know I was doing that. So that's compulsion, but anticipation is when you think about a pleasure before it actually arrives. Like, you ever come home from a really rotten, hard day at work, maybe you've been on the tube all day, maybe you've been on the tube all day. See that ambiguity? Been on the tube all day. Tube is American slang for penis. Do they have, is it slang here for that too?
No.
Sorry, you can't use that. You could try it. And all you can think about is just stripping off those clothes and getting into the shower. You like baths or showers? Baths. And then there's that moment of sliding in. You just let the warm pleasure take you. Now, when I talk about that moment of sliding in, this is what we call sexual metaphor. This is what's known as an accelerator. In speed seduction, we have certain things called accelerators. Accelerators take that feeling and really ramp it up. And one of the accelerators is sexual metaphor, right? So when I talk about sliding in, what am I talking about? Am I talking about sliding into the water? Am I talking about the Don Johnson sliding into the Lindsay Lohan? Not funny, man. That's the funny motherfucker. What are we talking about? Well, we're talking about both. So the unconscious mind goes, oh, it must be both. Then there's that moment of sliding in. Sometimes I have women say, oh my God, it sounds like sex. Oh yeah, doesn't it? Or you ever been with someone and you look at them and there's that moment, that first soft brush of the lips, and it's as if every moment of pleasure that's ever going to be experienced is enfolded in that first electric touch. Or, if you really like chocolate, what's your favorite kind of chocolate? Or whatever. Whatever she gives you. Say, you know, I have this friend, and she says you take the chocolate, you don't eat it right away, you save it, you think about it on the ride home, then you take it, you slowly unpeel it, and then you hold just the tip of it to your tongue, and then there's that moment where you just let it melt against your tongue. It's like an explosion of pleasure in your mouth. You're thinking you can't possibly do this, but you can. And you say, you know, I used to think that the most important thoughts come from the conscious mind, but now I realize so much bubbles up from the unconscious. I used to think that all my most important thoughts come from above, but now I know. I really know that so many important thoughts come from below me, Debbie. You hear the ambiguity? Now, the media likes to make fun of this because they think, wait a minute, below me. Out of context, it won't do. Remember I said that the proper theme gets her talking from the right place in the mind, gets her trance words, but what else does the proper theme do? Speak up, what does it do? It gives the context against which, the background against which, and something that's ambiguous is properly interpreted by the unconscious mind. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So out of context, if you say, you know, if you just walk up and say, hey Debbie, they're the thoughts that are above me and then some thoughts are below me, Debbie, that's ridiculous. It won't work, and I never claimed it would. These kind of ambiguities, those of you watching this at home, and I'm not supposed to talk to the camera, but I bleeding well will, because this is where the media deliberately, to get cheap laughs, misquotes me. These kind of ambiguities like below me and happiness and all that, I never claimed they work out of context and isolation, any more than a tire works if it's not connected to the rest of the car. But in the context of a discussion that provides the overall background or framework to interpret the ambiguity, they do work. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All right, let's take a 5-minute break. She'll come up. Someone had a question. People always ask me a question on the breaks, and I always say, well, ask during seminar, so I can give you a good answer that benefits everybody. Who had questions during the break? Or reminded me of something they wanted me to teach?
Meditation.
What's that?
Meditation.
Oh, you wanted me to get into the meditation part. Because remember I said, listen to me. This is really crucial. When you go through changes in a very emotionally charged area of life, in an area of life that's been very troubling, very difficult, and James was kind enough to share his story. He was talking about how he was basically going to do himself in if he didn't find an answer to all this stuff, correct? Yeah. You're ready to kill yourself. In a very emotionally troubling area of life, how can you give yourself a chance to be clean from all of that and to move up a learning curve without carrying all the old stuff with you? Without having all that noise in your mind chattering so loudly that you can't even apply the new stuff. Now, I don't care, just for the sake of this discussion, whose field material you're applying, whether it's, you know, the M&M candy method or anybody else's, you still have this challenge of how do you move up that learning curve? How do you do that? How do you quiet the noise in your mind? And also, one of the things I said, I want to tell you a story. Look up here. There's no need to take notes. Look up here. I'll tell you a story. A couple of years back, I was doing a seminar, and usually when I teach a seminar, I have dreams the morning of the event that give me an indication of what to teach. And roll those over there. I had a dream that there was this little portable transistor radio playing. It was annoying me, so I went to switch it off. And I switched it off, but it was still running. And so I opened up the back, and I took the battery out. It was still running. So one of my nerdy students said, well, the reason it's still running is these solenoids are molded together, and it's creating an electric current. So just cut the solenoids. So I cut the solenoids, and the radio was still playing. And I realized that the radio was playing because that's what radios do. And the point of this metaphor, this story, is that when you go to make changes in your life, stuff is going to come up. I guarantee you that from time to time, or in the beginning, maybe even frequently, your stuff will come right back up in your face. All the old beliefs, all the old patterns of thinking and feeling. And they're not coming up because you hate yourself. They're not coming up because you're out to sabotage yourself or you have low self-esteem. I can't hear you. Self-esteem. Not everyone's answering. Low self-esteem. Like I said, there's no such fucking thing as self-esteem. It didn't exist before some author wrote about it in the 60s and 70s and got on a chat show. Where was it before someone wrote about it? There's no such thing as self-esteem. It's a bugaboo. It's a lie. But there is, and people don't do things, I think, to deliberately sabotage. These things come up because they have a momentum. They have momentum. They have energy. So you have to know what to do with them. Now, I've been through a lot of healing work and talked to a lot of people, but actually Shirlene back there, to her credit, was the first person to say to me that things are going to come up. And there are three, what are the three bad alternatives when old patterns come up? What are the three things that don't work? Somebody. What's that? Okay, if you suppress it, what happens if you suppress all those old ways of thinking, all those old emotions? Why is that not a very useful thing to do? It comes back with even more power. Remember I used the metaphor of kinking a garden hose? When you kink a garden hose, what happens? The pressure builds up and it explodes. Now many of your hoses are already exploding with too much pressure, so we don't want to go there, right? True? So we can suppress, but that doesn't work very well. What else can we do? We can buy back into it and just keep running the stuff in our heads. Just for the purpose of the camera, Channel 4 guy, you should watch this. It's going to be very instructive. He can only see the back of your head, so don't worry. But how many people here run over scenarios over and over and over of how they failed with women? And they run it over and over in their mind, over and over and over again, and inadvertently just reinforce that same behavior. Raise your hands if you do that. It's pretty near a universal phenomenon. Now, here's a very important principle of understanding human behavior in the human brain. Brains tend to do what you rehearse. If you rehearse 100,000 times, thank you, Doug. If you rehearse 100,000 times how you failed with Debbie or Sally. If you rehearse 100,000 times seeing what you did wrong, what are you telling your brain to do? What you rehearse, what you review, is what you rehearse. The brain has no way of telling what you review over and over, what you ruminate on, from what you're rehearsing. The brain can't tell. To the brain, it feels like, oh, you're rehearsing what you want me to do. So when you get out into the world and a similar situation pops up, what is your brain naturally going to do? It's going to do the same thing. And now you do the same thing, and that reinforces your belief that what? It reinforces your belief that you can't do it, that you're a loser, that women suck, etc., etc. So what does that do? It gets you started on the whole cycle of ruminating over and over again. True or false? So you have the cycle of rumination where you reinforce the old pattern of behavior and all the limiting beliefs that go with it. You go out in the world, and even though you consciously want to change, you have all this stuff rehearsed, and you do the wrong thing, which leads to shitty results, which leads to more rumination. Do we get the cycle? So you get all the rumination, you get ineffective behavior, which leads to shitty results, which leads to more rumination, and you're trapped. So what do most guys do? Well, most guys suppress it, or they buy back into it, or they try to push through the pain. Now, what's the challenge of pushing through pain? Anybody? Yes, tell me.
You're bringing all the old shit with you as you're going forward.
That's right. When you push through pain, you're also pushing the pain out in front of you. When you push through pain, you're pushing the pain out in front of you. Now, look here. Get the understanding. If it's true, if what I'm telling you is true, if it is true that your vibe is the fundamental thing that attracts or repulses people, and you're walking around with a painful vibe, what is likely to happen?
You'll attract pain.
You will either attract pain and push away people who are at a different level. True? And here's the other thing. That pain constitutes a tremendous field of noise. It's a tremendous field of noise. So when a woman is trying to communicate to you, that communication has got to push its way through all that pain. So you're very likely to distort what she says. You're very likely to distort the meaning of what she says. You're likely to misinterpret her behavior. Do you understand? Pain tends to distort our perception and drive behavior. Do you understand? When it becomes excessive. Yes, Charlene? Of course you can. Boom it out so they can hear you, sweetie.
He's talking about your pain distorting how you're perceiving her too. But on the other side of that coin, that pain is very tangibly uncomfortable. And she'll feel that.
Right.
And she'll probably not want to.
Right. That's what I was getting to that. That also, no matter what technique you use, if you're pushing it through pain, it's going to be colored by that. You understand? If you're pushing your words through pain, your words are going to be colored by that. My mother used to say, if you dip your sunglasses in dog shit, even the roses will look brown. God bless my mother. We lost my mother's physical form. Her physical form left us April 29th of this year. But my mother is still with me in all the ways I teach, and my own sarcastic expressions. My mom is always with me. And the other big problem is, and here's the really big challenge. As I said to you, I believe, and Channel 4 guy, this is really important, so you should get me when you, is it on me? Well, okay, this is crucial. The biggest challenge facing men when it comes to applying any of this material, any other camp's material, is not fear, it's not approach anxiety, it's not anger, it's not sadness. The biggest single problem is confusion. Confusion. That's the biggest cause of suffering. When you can't figure out whether it's working or not working. Has that ever happened to you? Is it working or not working? I'll tell you a story. I've told this story many times, but it's so instructive, I have to tell it because it's crucial. One of my students a few years back, this is a guy who couldn't even talk to women. He used my material faithfully. I mean, he was very rigorous about it. And so he goes to this bar. I really don't remember if it was a bar or a club, but it doesn't really matter for the sake of this discussion. It was something similar, bar or club, right? You don't really care. There is a super hot girl, like a 10 plus. Now, to me, there are no 10s. There are only 9s. They become 10s when they fall all over me. That's when they become 10s. So there are no 10s unless they behave and treat me a certain way. But that's a very important point. You need to learn to screen for how the woman treats you. If she treats you poorly, then I don't care what she looks like. She's a 2 or a 1. When you guys genuinely get this point about screening, when it no longer, at first you have to fake it till you make it. You have to act like a screener. But eventually you really get to the point where you genuinely really screen people based on how they treat you. And something else, how they treat other people. Here's a good clue to know who to approach. In a public place where there's a lot of women, watch for the woman who's paying really careful, genuine attention to her friends when they're talking. Look here. Look here. Watch for the woman who's paying genuine, real attention to her friends when they're talking. Because that's someone who's showing that she has some empathy. But let me tell you the story. So he uses my stuff. There's this 10, and she's blowing all the guys off. She's shooting him down. It gets to the point where guys are approaching her, and then they're doing the U-turn. Before they, it's like the emergency pickup bat turn. Right? So he's like, all that shows me, he's thinking, all that shows me is these guys haven't touched her in the way she needs to be touched. I can't let that girl's evening be ruined by not giving her the chance to meet someone who's truly different. So he went up and he approached her. I forget what he said. Something along the lines, he said something like, you know, isn't it interesting you go through a whole evening of the same old tired, boring things, but every once in a while, an opportunity for something different presents itself. I'm so-and-so, right? Anyway, he used my stuff, and within like 30 minutes, he was making out with this chick. And out of the corner of his eye, he was looking, all these guys are going like, who the fuck is this guy? Like, how is he doing this? He must have an 18-inch, I don't know. Anyway, he was very excited about this. He figures, I'm going to play it cool. I'm going to get this lady's phone number, and I'll wait a couple of days and I'll call her. So that's what he does. So 2 days go by and he's thinking about it and thinking about it. He goes to reach for the number and I think you know where the story is going. It's not there on the desk. It's not there. Now, you ever had that feeling that you've been late for an appointment and you go to reach for your car keys and you can't find them? You ever have that happen? Yeah, well, he's tossing the apartment, looking everywhere. And then he goes, oh my God, the trash goes out tonight. Holy shit. So he goes to the big, I don't know, what's the English word for these big dumpsters? Is it a dumpster? They call it a dumpster, or anyway. He goes diving through the dumpster for the whole apartment complex. And he told me he's down there digging deeper. He's digging deeper and deeper, looking for this thing. He's going through progressively thicker sedimentary layers of dirty diapers and disposed tampons and rotting food and cat shit and just going deeper and deeper through all this stuff, and it's floating on his face, and he's like, you know. And finally he said after 90 minutes, he comes up for air, and he doesn't have the number. And he said, my old self came back. He said, it's been 6 weeks, I've been so depressed I can't even talk to a girl. Because my old self came back. And now when people talk, I've learned that their surface language is really an opportunity to peer deeper into the code of how they're processing, to peer much deeper into the code of how they're really processing it, right? And so I thought, his old self, well, first of all, when he was talking, guys, I want to quiz you. When he was talking, chatting up that lovely lady in the pub or the bar, whatever it was, where was his old self then?
Hiding.
Where was it hiding? You said hiding. Where was it hiding? In the bathroom?
In the deeper he's unconscious.
Hiding deep in the unconscious? Someone else give me an explanation. Where was his old self then?
He wasn't aware of it.
He wasn't aware of it? Somebody else. Where was his old self? James?
He wasn't focusing on his own self. He was
He wasn't focused on the old self. He was focused on the new self. Somebody else. Where was his old self? That camera stays on me. Be very careful with the angles. Okay? All right. Where was his old self? Where did it go? What? It was suppressed. I think it went to Pismo Beach to play in the Bugs Bunny Golf Open. Where was it?
There is no old self or new self.
The man of Indian extraction got the right answer. There is no old self and there is no new self. There's only the ongoing flow of where you choose to put your attention and the beliefs and the energetics that are behind it. Now, here's what I found the most interesting. This guy was so focused on the fact that he couldn't find the phone number that he completely hypnotically hallucinated away all the stuff he did right. Isn't it interesting that he did 95% of it correctly? Far and away better than anything that anyone in that club or pub did, and better than anything he had ever done before. But because the last little piece was missing, he concluded that the whole thing was a failure, that he was hopeless, and he forgot all the skills that he had beautifully developed. To me, as someone who studied trance and studied meditation and studied the mind, that's the most fascinating thing. How is that possible that he forgot everything he did right and just decided the whole thing was a failure and he chucked the whole thing? Now, by the way, do you think, who here thinks that that's uncommon? That that's not a typical thing that happens to guys when they're learning this? How many think that that kind of thing is common? That you do a lot of things right, but if you don't get it all right, you conclude you're a failure and you slide back down the learning curve. Exactly right. Now, no one else, what are you doing filming out the window? This is crucial stuff, cameraman. I'm serious. You're filming out the window. I'm revealing the secrets of deep personal change. I'm serious because no one else in the seduction community even understands this. They don't even see it, let alone have an answer for it. When you are engaging in real growth in an area of life that's been deeply emotionally challenging, that's surrounded by limiting beliefs and old experiences, if you're not very disciplined, the minute things don't go exactly right, you're going to interpret the whole thing as failure. And what happens? You slide back down the learning curve, and then you've got to work through weeks of depression and talking yourself into it and trying to pump yourself back up. Am I wrong or am I right?
You're right.
I'm absolutely right. So this takes something that should be a joy, that should be easy, and it turns it into an exhausting task. Now, let's be honest. Here we're brothers. We're not here to compete. How many have found that this can be an emotionally, utterly exhausting task exactly because of this phenomenon?
Yes.
Now, how many times can men come together in a room and admit that things have emotionally exhausted them? That we share a pain? Now, did this guy do this because he wanted to sabotage himself?
No.
Did he do this because he had low self-esteem? Did he? He did this because he never trained himself how to separate from those emotions, how to have an experience of them without the beliefs, how to transmute that emotional energy into pure motivation for his peace of mind, his balance, his centering, his happiness independent of conditions, his vision of who he's already every day more and more becoming. He had no way of separating out the raw emotion from the story. He had no beliefs for looking at the experience through which he could actually see what works. What if he had, I said, you know how I solved this problem for him? Would you like to know the answer I gave him? Yes. Sir, can I ask you just to stop fussing about with that? We can wait till later. It's very distracting to me as a teacher. Thank you. Do you know what I said to him? I said, wait a minute. Here's the problem. You're viewing what you did with that woman as an accident rather than as a result of the skills that you exercised. You're looking at it as a fluke. What if you were to stop, remember all the skills that you used, and view being able to attract women as a common, everyday part of your life wherever you went? Now, looking at the event through that, how do you feel? Oh, my new self is back. I said, Eureka, that'll be 5,000 pounds. No, no, it's my joy to help people simply, hold on, by simply redirecting them. You see, because he had assumed that what happened was a fluke. I had to refocus him on the fact that, no, it wasn't a fluke, it was a result of your skill. And what if it was just common? The way you walk through life all the time. Now, the technical part about what he should have done differently is not the subject of this discussion. We could have the discussion. We could have said technically he could have tried to take her home that night, or technically he could have put the number in a special place where he knows not to forget it. That doesn't really matter. The technical solution to the story is not what the story is about. The story is about this phenomena where in an emotionally charged area of life, you need a disciplined way to quiet down your mind. Yes? You need to be able to take on some very empowering beliefs for learning. You need to be able, and here's the difference. I didn't give you the alternative. Here's the answer. There's a beautiful alternative to suppressing the emotion, to buying back into the story, or pushing through the pain. The beautiful alternative that's so profoundly powerful, I can't tell you how powerful this is. This is life. I want you guys to really look up here, because sometimes I have such important points to make that my passion as a teacher, I fear that I'm not getting the point across. So I really want you to pay attention with full rigor to me. The ability to experience something without fighting it, with equanimity. Equanimity means you don't fight it or try to change it in any way. With equanimity and with clarity. So you have a complete experience separated out from the story. If you can have an experience of the raw emotional energy without any of the verbal dialogue or the visual imagery, if you can have an experience through equanimity, which means you don't buy into it, but you don't suppress it either. The beautiful alternative is to have the experience with full clarity, without buying into it, without trying to change it. That emotional energy transmutes itself into raw power that you can then give back to yourself for peace of mind, for clarity, for grounding, for your belief in your ability to learn anything, for your vision of who you every day are already more and more becoming. Because if you can develop a vision for who you're already becoming that's not dependent on support from the external environment. In other words, you don't need people to support you in that vision. You don't need women to say, oh yes, you're attractive, Doug, or Bob. At the same time, you're open to feedback from the environment. That's extraordinarily powerful. When you can walk through the world like that, then you lose the fear of uncertainty. See, I know how guys are trapped because I used to be deeply trapped. Many of you are trapped in the following loop. Am I not right about this kind of stuff?
Yes.
I'm willing to bet that 80% of you are trapped in the following loop. You're not willing to actually try this material until you're 100% certain it will work. And there's no way to be certain it will work until you try it. So you wind up never being certain and never trying it. True or false? How many people go through that loop? The rest of you are fucking liars. Look at this. Raise your hand again. How many people go through that loop? How do you break the loop? You break the loop by having absolute equanimity with uncertainty. You don't try to fight the uncertainty. I'm going to show you how. If all I do is give you the principle, but I don't give you the process, I'm a cheat and a liar, and I'm not. So I'm going to give you the process. But if you can have the experience with equanimity, then look here. Here's what I'm drawing. Here's what I'm aiming at. Here's what I'm moving towards. If you can experience with equanimity what most people fear, if you're totally okay with walking through uncertainty because it just becomes energy that you can utilize, then that's what I call stealth charisma. That's really sexy. Because very few people in this world will take a risk. They want to be certain before they take a step. If you're okay with uncertainty and are perfectly fine with it, that's the kind of confidence that no one can take away from you because it's totally an internal locus of control. You are the person completely in control. No one can ever take it away from you. It's not dependent on having any social skill at all. You can go out that door right now and have this kind of confidence because it's not dependent on being slick or smooth or good at what you do. It's incredibly stealthy. No one will ever be able to somehow detect it because it's coming organically from who you really are. They can't detect it as an act because it's not an act, it's real. And here's the fourth thing. You don't have to be the life of the party. You don't have to be the person who commands the whole room, the alpha dog who's telling all the stories, demonstrating his higher value. I think sometimes those guys are just demonstrating that they've got to be high to talk that way. You don't have to do any of that. Because by virtue of how you're stepping through your world, you're attractive. Because you're no longer afraid. You're no longer tightening up and tensing against all those things everyone else is tense about. You're relaxed. And I'll show you, here's the thing. You don't even have to be comfortable with yourself. You just have to have equanimity with your discomfort. You just have to be able to experience the discomfort without buying into the story surrounding it and not fighting it. And that will translate into a different kind of comfort. See, there's different kinds of confidence. This is really crucial you get this. Get the understanding and then you can write it down. There's performance confidence. You've done something right 1,000 times. So 1,001 makes sense that you'd be sure you can do it right, right? There's performance confidence. There's rehearsal confidence. Now, I teach rehearsal confidence, and rehearsal confidence is good once you've shut off all that rumination. If you do all this rehearsal confidence, imagining yourself 40 feet tall, imagining how you want to sound and how you look, it's great. I believe in it. I teach it. I will teach it to you. However, if you do that while all this other stuff is still running, you're going to create an internal civil war. How many here who do that rumination also do some positive programming? And how many still feel like you're being pulled apart? Because sometimes, occasionally you go with the positive programming. Most of the time you go with what you've been ruminating on. Raise your hand. So again, the process of personal change becomes exhausting. And you figure, I'll just go to someone else's seminar or I'll buy some more tapes. God knows I want you to buy more tapes, but not for that reason. I want you to buy more of my stuff because you see, wait a minute, this is revolutionary. He's seen much deeper into the fundamentals of this. I want to learn more. Not because of that reason. You get it? So there's rehearsal confidence. Rehearsal confidence is you go into an altered state or you do this magic stuff, which I'll show you, and you imagine the way you would like to feel, act, think, and talk. You imagine the qualities you'd like to bring into it. I love that stuff. I teach it. I'll teach it to the day I die. It works, but it only works at the right part in the sequence. You only do that after you've handled all the rumination, so that way you're not fighting yourself. Does that make sense? So there's rehearsal confidence, there's performance confidence, there's acceptance confidence. Acceptance confidence, and I'm going to show you how to do this. I'm not just going to explain it. I'm going to give you drills so you can learn to actually take this on and walk the world like this. Acceptance confidence is you have complete equanimity with all these emotions that have been troubling you. You don't buy into the story and you don't tense up or turn away. And they just turn into a flow of energy. They turn into like effervescent bubbles and you can just surf right across it. What if your former worst fears and anxiety could just turn into pure energy that you could surf across to do all the attracting you wanted to do? Would that be great? Yes or no? Who would like that? I can't hear you. Yes. Do you believe that they want that, Charlene? Yeah, I believe that too. Right? So that's acceptance confidence. But guess what? There's a fourth kind of confidence. Now, if you think I've been stretching your ability to follow and believe me up until now, now I'm really going to stretch your ability to believe me. I'm going to sound, at first, when you don't listen, I may sound like one of those new age tree-hugging granola guys in the woods who's been there. Believe me, I'm far from a new ager. I think the people who teach the secret should be boiled alive in their own excrement. After their shriveled little testes are slit open and they're fed their own sperm. I hate that shit. Because it's so fucking stupid. It's fucking stupid. The secret teaches you that the universe is your wishing well. It's all here, everything that's here, all the time that existed before you were born, that eternity of time that existed before you were born, and the eternity of time that will exist after you're taken out. All of it is there, and everything, all the globular clusters, the black holes, the galaxies, the whole thing was created just so you could get the lard off your ass get that Jaguar you've always wanted, get that raise, have that perfect lover. It's all put here for you. It's all your wishing well. And you know, those kids who are starving to death in Zimbabwe, and those pesky Indians who are dying on the streets, and the next war that George Bush is about to launch on who knows what fucking pretext. Some Iranian farted on the border and disturbed our surge. All that doesn't matter because it's all put here so you could have whatever you want. The universe is your wishing well. I don't think it works that way. I don't think everything was put here so humans could be happy the way humans define it. Humans define happiness as the body is comfortable or feeling pleasure, the mind has answers, and you're getting what you want. That's the human definition of happiness. Now, I'm not saying that that doesn't happen and that you can't arrange things so that more of that happens. But ultimately, that is not why everything is here. Any more than it's true that the Earth is the center of the universe and everything revolves around us. I don't think the human definition of happiness is why we're here. But I think there is another definition of happiness that has nothing to do with those things. So anyway, here it comes. So we've gone through performance confidence. Do we understand that? Yeah. We've gone through acceptance confidence. We've gone through rehearsal confidence. Does that make sense? By the way, you're seeing a big piece of speed seduction here, Channel 4, is how we learn to manage our own emotions, how we learn to teach ourselves to learn. This is a huge piece of it. More and more, this is what it's about. The final form of confidence, which it's subtle, but it's extraordinarily powerful. It's the confidence I was able to show when that woman screamed at me. Right. Remember I told the story about coming out of the restaurant and the women were waiting for the taxi and that woman was just lambasting me and I was okay with it? I had another experience about 6 weeks ago. I was at a Starbucks and there was this drop-dead beautiful black woman throwing things into the dumpster. And I said, it looks like you're moving house. And she got really, she said to me, fuck you, motherfucker. I don't fucking need your comments. I don't fucking want to talk to you. Fuck off. And she was really angry to the point where I thought, and it wasn't like I felt upset that I had to like ground or anything. I was okay. I instantly knew that you know what my thought was? I thought, that person's in pain. She's hurting. I thought for someone to have that much anger at me, for something so innocuous, underneath the anger was enormous suffering. Something must have happened to her to put her through tremendous pain. Either she had very bad experiences with men or she was in a... And my response to her was, I said, you know, nothing I said to you merited that kind of response. So whoever you're angry at, it's not me. But I'm sorry that you're going through that because it doesn't make me happy to see someone else hurt. Now, what was her response? Fuck you, I don't fucking need your sympathy. Get the fuck out of my face. I went, okay. And I walked. She didn't take it. She couldn't hear it, but that's okay. The fourth kind of confidence is what I call compassion confidence. You can write that down, compassion confidence. Now, believe it or not, this is the true key to everything I do. Even though you've heard me teach you some language patterns, and you've seen in how I talk to you, I have very slick communication with you, and I can do 15 million triple verbal somersaults. The real key to what I've been doing lately is this one, and I owe my teacher Shinzen Young. By the way, Shinzen is doing a retreat in California, in Southern California, October 29th through November 4th. He's doing a week-long silent meditation retreat. I will be there for that week. His teachings have profoundly transformed how I experience my life. I don't mean a peak experience. A peak experience, you go to a seminar, you're high for a month or a few weeks, and then you go back to normal. This has transformed how I process and do my life. Compassion confidence is simply a realization, look here, and then you can write it. It's a realization that fundamentally we're all in the same boat. That fundamentally we all came in the same way. What were you wearing when you were born? I can't hear you. Nothing. Okay. What were you wearing when you were born? Nothing. What was Charlene wearing when she was born? A nice bikini? Liar. Nothing. I guarantee you, has anyone recently seen a really hot woman who they'd like to approach, but they either didn't or the approach didn't go where they wanted? Anybody? I want you to picture that really hot woman in your mind. What was she wearing the day she was born?
Not much.
Nothing. Now, what's going to happen? I guarantee you something's going to happen to all of us one day. I don't make too many guarantees, but I can absolutely guarantee that every person here today will undergo something. Something's going to happen to them. Can someone tell me? What's that? I can't hear you. You're going to die. So we all share the fundamental reality of being born naked, and we're all going to die. True or false? True. Now, some of you can tell me that Jesus will come back and lift you. Setting that aside, we're all going to die, correct?
Yes.
That woman who screamed at me in front of the Starbucks, she came in the same way I did, bookie butt naked. Now, I wanted to share that condition with her again, but it didn't happen, okay? And she's going to go out one day when she stops doing this. End of story. Not only is that true, but I know that at every moment, the same four fundamental forces are shaping me and her. We are all in the hands of the same fundamental set of forces, whether you want to view it as God or nature or the Tao. The same four fundamental forces, the same artist is shaping the clay of time, space, world, matter, energy, and all of us constantly. Those four forces are craving. All of us experience pleasure and we want more of it. We crave that pleasure. Yes? You see the hot babe, you get a little jolt of pleasure from looking at her and you want more. True or false? Every human, old, young, black, white, yellow, green, male, female, or any transitory species in between the two sexes, or a combination thereof, experiences craving. And it's hardwired deep in the neurology of who we are. Very few people ever experience pure pleasure. They experience pleasure entangled with the craving, the grasping around it. And it's hardwired in. So the craving arises even before you're consciously aware of the pleasure. That craving arrives right along with it. All human beings experience craving. All of us. The second force that's always tugging and pulling and constantly shaping our who we are is aversion. Aversion. We suffer and we don't want to suffer. We have pain and we tighten up or we turn away from it. We do everything we can to avoid fear, to avoid uncertainty, to avoid physical discomfort. We're hungry and we don't want to be hungry. We're hot. Excuse me, you don't want to be hot. Aversion. Yes? Do you think that super hot woman who you would like to sleep with, or who you're in love with, or who you want to marry, I don't care, do you think she doesn't experience craving and aversion? She does, I guarantee it. The third one is unconsciousness. Every human being, look at me. Get the transmission, and please stop writing. Every human being suffers because of unconsciousness. All this ruminating you were doing about all the times you failed with women, were you consciously aware of what the result would be of doing that? I'm willing to bet that rumination was even going on in the background as a background buzz throughout your day, whether you were aware of it or not. Do you realize how much of your tension and anxiety and pain around women you've been carrying into every situation, even the ones that have nothing to do with women? How many of you have found that rumination going on when you're doing something that has nothing to do with women? When you're at a party and supposedly enjoying yourself with people, or you're sitting at your desk at work? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. That rumination is always going on unconsciously, causing suffering. So there's unconsciousness. We want to change. We want to be different. But unconscious desires, unconscious aversions, they drive us and they tear us apart. Am I lying or am I telling the truth? But guess what? That woman who you want something from, who you thought you had to impress, she's suffering in the same way. She's suffering in the same way. Her emotions are entangled, unconsciousness is driving her. It's happening to all of us. We have craving, we have aversion, we have unconsciousness, and finally we have clarity.